this is actually where crypto has an unfair advantage, where if you can sort of invert this operation, so it's not like me as a centralized company, I have to go to 200 different countries, collect data on all of these different things. If I can instead just bounty it out to the world and say, look, anyone who can submit data that meets X, Y, and Z requirement, you will get compensated.
All views expressed by the hosts and guests in this podcast are solely their opinions and do not reflect the opinions of their respective employers. Guests and hosts may maintain positions in the assets discussed in this podcast. This podcast is for informational purposes only, and nothing in the podcast is intended to be financial, legal, or even life advice.
How about this? In the meanwhile we're doing this, do you want to do a quick intro about yourself so people know what you're talking about?
Sure, yeah. Hey everyone, great to meet you. My name's John. I'm the president of the BitRobot Foundation. I guess to give a little bit of background around me, so I started my career at Palantir, was there for a number of years, ended up working at Protocol Labs, working on the decentralized internet, so IPFS, Filecoin, all of that good stuff. I got fully de-pin-pilled, and through that work, I met Michael Cho, who's the founder of Robotics. Michael at the time had been working on basically a game which would allow people to drive real-world little robots to collect data sets. And realizing that there was an opportunity to take that sort of game, turn it into a DPIN, and expand the focus. So it's not just creating these little urban navigation data sets, but actually try to use this as a mechanism to create the data assets that you need to make smarter robots. And so that's what BitRobot was born out of. And now I'm helping grow the foundation so we can actually make that a reality.
Nice. Oh, well, when was this, by the way? When does the whole idea started and everything?
Yeah, so this goes back maybe almost 2 years ago at this point. So, I mean, I should say the Photobots team has been working on like robotics for a number of years. So even before that, they'd been around for 3 years and some change. And so they sort of went through, I mean, even through COVID, building like hardware, and you can remember how fucked supply chains were. So they've been at this for a while. I had met Michael through a mutual friend maybe 3 years ago. And so 2 years ago at Token 2049 at Singapore is when we met up, realized like there is an opportunity here. We then went to Iceland, Juan from Protocol Labs. He's both a big investor and also very involved. We all three of us worked on the white paper together. And that's sort of the genesis of how did everything snowball.
Sounds good. All right, I'm a full normie on robotic, right? So like, thank you for coming on. I say this for the community, but like this is actually mainly for me to be more educated about the robotic sector. How about this? I'll tell you my understanding of it and my experience with it, and maybe you can educate me on the things.
Yeah, let's do it.
So from my understanding, robotics, it's basically like a robot that do stuff, right? But the problem is either the model is not smart enough to do dynamic motions, or the hardware is too expensive, like the humanoid things, as well as like let's say they are not designed to do complex enough actions. So robotics were hot, like I don't know, like 10 years ago as well, or 15 years ago or so. But the implementation that I noticed afterwards is actually just in either manufacturing or like food delivery within the hotels in China. That's what I know. But I think it's because of like data training and stuff. So I've been talking with some friends. So like sounds like robotic right now is mainly either in manufacturing the parts, how good the parts and how cost effective they are, as well as like the data labeling to train the robot, because there's a future into it, right? Is there anything you want to cover on my basic understanding on it?
No, I think you touched on a lot of the important parts. So I think you could say there's like a hardware part of the problem, which is like, what is the right form factor? How do you get it at the right price point? How do you build a thing that's generalizable for more and more use cases? That's like one set of challenges. I think there's been a lot of progress on that front, and I think that's why you see so many humanoid manufacturers as an example. I think then there's also like a software problem, which is, cool, we can build all of this hardware. Maybe that can get cheap enough, but like, can this robot do useful things? And I think especially in the last, call it 2 to 3 years, especially as AI has taken off, there's been sort of a renewed interest on sort of what can we do with VLAs, what can we do with generative AI in order to get closer to building a generalized physical intelligence. I should contrast this with how people have thought about classical robotics, because we've actually had robots for quite a while. Like you sort of touched on this, in factories we have robots. So like lots of car manufacturing is automated these days. And so there are places where we do have robots today. It's just they're narrowly constrained based on like how do you basically build your factory in such a way that the robot doesn't have tons of perturbations or it doesn't have to handle a ton of edge cases effectively. You're trying to like really constrain the design space. The thing that people are very excited about with physical AI, and I would say this is like the holy grail, is like how do you make a robot that can just operate in the real world the same way that a human could? That doesn't mean it has to necessarily have a human form factor. So like you'll see humanoid like robots that have like a wheelbase. You'll see some that are just like two arms. But the idea is that you want to get to the same level of dexterity, the same level of generalizability as what a human does, so that you can start having it take on more and more sophisticated tasks.
I see. So would you say the blockers? So robotics became hot again because of AI, or maybe that's my like retail view, right? So is it because with AI you can do more dynamic things on a, let's say, physical ready robot that has like 10 fingers, 12 fingers, 20 fingers to do certain tasks, and AI either lower the cost of development, data collecting, or expands its use case based on the capability? Is that why it's became hot again?
Yeah, well, it's more like you have these novel approaches that are having very promising results. And so you're like, oh, there might be a path through solving this challenge that we didn't see before. I would like contrast that though with like generative AI, where if you look at how fast things are improving on that side, a lot of that comes because we have this giant corpus of data that we can use as sort of the feed into these like pre-training or the pre-training for these models. So you have all of the data on the internet, you have all the code that we produce, you have all the images that we've created. So it's like when you're trying to train a model to generate that sort of output, you have a large corpus of data to work with. The same is not true in robotics. And you can sort of think of this intuitively based on like what's conscious versus what's subconscious. Like the internet itself, like the way that you and I are talking to each other, like we are consciously putting thoughts out there. Like that's how humans communicate with each other. So you create this large corpus of data just by virtue of humans connecting with each other over digital, like over the digital realm. The same is not true for like, how am I moving my wrist? Like there is no sensor here telling me like, what am I doing with my arm, or how hard do I have to grip to hold my phone up? Like that is a data set that's subconscious that doesn't really get captured anywhere. And so a lot of what robotics is at the current moment is like, how do we solve this data bottleneck? And there's basically three different approaches that people are looking at this. So the three are simulation, teleoperation, and call it egocentric video. So simulation is like, I create a digital environment, I allow the robot to try in as many different ways as it can. And I use the output of that to basically like create the policy. Oh, can you hear me? Sorry, my headphones just freaked out for a second.
Yeah, it's even better now. Sorry, can you go back to the three approach? Simulation,
teleoperation, egocentric video. So simulation, you put everything in a giant compute cluster. You're basically trying all of these different perturbations until you have a generalized policy for whatever that thing is. The challenge with simulation is you could simulate anything you really want, and you think about what that means. Like you're really trying to guess in the infinite space of the universe, what are all the different ways that you could be frying an egg? That's like a very large, like different types of eggs, different types of frying pans, different types of lighting conditions, different orientation of things in the kitchen. So like that is a very long tail of things to simulate. So sure, if you had infinite compute and infinite time, you could try everything. But you have to, if you want it to be done in any reasonable amount of time, you have to trim the search space, which inherently means that you're cutting out things that you're going to test, which means there might be edge cases. And that's what we call the sim to real gap. So you can simulate anything, but it may not be representative of the real world. In teleoperation, you basically have a human directly controlling a robot. So it's like, you might have seen people do this with Unitrees. They basically actually, we just open sourced a data set with Unitree on this, where we basically had a bunch of people put humanoids in their homes, still like Unitree G1s. And then we had people teleoperating them to do their chores. So it was like folding laundry, washing dishes, things like that. Very cool and a useful data set. You're exactly showing how the robot should go do a task. The challenge is to create that data set, you have to have a lot of people put a lot of humanoids in their homes and then manually do all of these tasks. And so it's expensive to collect because you have this huge capital outlay because everyone has to go put a humanoid out in the world. And then it also requires skilled operators to do that data collection. So although it's very mapped exactly to the hardware that you want, the challenge is that it's both expensive to scale and it may not get you the diversity because of those inherent costs. So the middle ground between those two of like fully mapped to robot, which is teleoperation, and fully in simulation is egocentric video, which is like, what if we could basically just put sensors on humans, have humans go do things with their body, and then just map between the human body to robot embodiments. So this would be like, I wear a wearable that could be like wrist sensors, that could be cameras on my head. I go do chores, I do all of this stuff. And ideally, that captures enough information that I can create a policy that then just translates directly over to a unit tree. And so, like, this last category, this is egocentric video. This is the thing that a lot of people are interested in right now. But you have what we call an embodiment gap because you still have to figure out this inherent challenge of, like, how do I translate between every human body to, like, every other robot embodiment? But these are, like, the three main pathways that people are trying to solve this bottleneck. But right now, this is the stage that we're at with robotics. There is a data bottleneck. Okay. How do we break it?
Thank you very much. That's very clear. So just so I understand, the first one is more like a virtual thing where you stimulate it. Am I correct to say that? And then the second time, it's more like you put a camera on someone and they just do it.
So the second one is more like remote control. It's like, imagine you literally
how I control a robot, like a robot arm to like to clean the clothes with a robotic that's go up, down, left, right kind of thing, like playing a game.
Exactly.
Kind of
think of like self-driving cars where it's like they might have a remote operator. That's literally a teleoperator. It's like someone is driving the car on behalf of the car. That's what teleoperation would be, but for humanoids as well.
Okay, and then the last one, it's like I put in camera on my head, I wear a glove while I do daily chores, and then just read data. Okay, exactly. So that's like the layer one of where you get all the data from. But surely you have to process them. And then is there like a big database of like everyone using the same data, or every data you collect is proprietary, and then that's why this is the difference between making your own robot better, or do you just sell the data away? Sorry, from a sector point of view, we can go into BitRobot a bit later if you don't mind.
Yeah. So could you repeat the question? So from a sector point of view, is the thing that people are interested in? What is the thing people are interested in? Is that the question?
Sorry, I don't even know myself. But the question is there's different types of company right now, right? Like, let's say I just want to speculate on stocks or understand the sectors, then I can understand what the companies are doing, right? I'm guessing some company only collects the data and sell the data. Some company that makes robot will have their own R&D department where they develop and collect information and process it somehow. And are those data I'm guessing there's not a lot of open source data because those worth a lot or something like just want to understand the landscape of type of companies and what are the major players or what are people to try to get to be better than other robots? Like what makes a good robotic company in their sector kind of thing?
Yeah. So I'll say if you think of the full stack of things that have to be done, and there's teams that are fully integrated. There's teams that are just focusing on individual vertical slices or horizontal slices. There's some that are doing multiple slices, but maybe not the full stack. So it is just very ranged. So I think you could sort of think of this from there's the hardware layer, and that could be at the point of are you just designing and then having someone else manufacture a humanoid for you? Are you both designing and manufacturing yourself, but you're still going to external suppliers? Are you designing and creating everything in your supply chain as well? Tesla might be the paradigmatic example of vertically integrate as far as you can all the way down. For lots of other companies, it's I don't know, a unit tree, they've designed their own actuator, they have supply chain partners, things like that. But that's all below the hardware level. At the hardware level, you do need SDKs and you need some data sets, but the thing that you want is for there to be basically the ability for other people to train policies to make your robot useful. So usually for the hardware manufacturers, there's some base amount of work that they will do. They will also try to create some of the initial data sets so that other people who are trying to build models have a starting point, so they don't have to build stuff from scratch. That's a lot about their own ecosystem strategies of how do you build network effects, in the same way that NVIDIA open sources a lot of data sets because it allows more people to build AI companies, which sells more GPUs. So there is a strategic thing there. But then you also have teams that are just focused on the model layer. So you might hear this term called cross embodiment. So cross embodiment is when you build an AI policy for robots that works across many different hardware embodiments. So last year at Coral, which is like a big robotics conference, Google was presenting Gemini. I forgot which version at this point, but their newest Gemini, which was like showing some interesting results on cross embodiment, where they were basically able to have the same model be working across like both a humanoid, I think it was an aptronic humanoid, as well as like a mobile manipulator. So that's the sort of thing where it's like having like cross embodiment is kind of the holy grail for a lot of the AI labs. And you see a lot of the AI labs like spinning up robotics departments. Like I think Meta announced that they have one, OpenAI's announced that they have one, Gemini obviously has one. So like for a lot of these teams, if you are already working on the model side, if you could solve the data stuff and you think you can solve the robot stuff, then having like the robot brain is an important layer to be in, which is where a lot of people are playing. In order to do that, though, you need a bunch of data. And so some of those teams collect and like annotate, label, all of that good stuff, their own data. So like Tesla famously does this. They did this with self-driving. They are also doing this for Optimus. For many other teams, though, the scale of data that you need is quite large. Part of what's interesting is that you want data that's very unique. So by definition, you don't want like tons of repetition of the same task over and over and over again. And so it's actually advantageous to not manage this all yourself and instead work with a bunch of partners. And so now you have lots of different companies that are spinning up to try to solve that problem for all of these different labs. So that gives you like a very high level general lay of the land. You could keep slicing this further and further and further. But yeah, there's a handful of teams that are fully vertically integrated. I would say that's probably more of the exception than the norm. Many other of these teams are focused at like maybe like one or two layers, and then they like outsource parts that they just don't want to like scale themselves.
Interesting. All right, thanks for sharing that. Then where does crypto play a part in this? Or how does crypto play a part in this to make it useful?
Yeah, so I'll say like this is the BitRobot thesis on this. So I think there's probably like three things that are interesting. So the first is that robotics itself is at a phase where it doesn't exactly know what are the most important things, like research pathways to be going down. So like right now, egocentric video is a very hot topic. It really wasn't a year ago. And it could be the case that you'll have other types of data collection that really matter as like whatever the new efficient frontier is sort of reached. And so BitRobot is structured in a way where you can spin up many of these markets in parallel. We use the concept of subnets for this, but each subnet is sort of its own little data market. But like crypto allows you to have people form and let the market sort of tell you what are the most important things to be going after and how do you like curate those data sets. So that's like one way crypto helps us, which is just like let the market basically like place bets and get rewarded for being correct on like what are these different trends in the robotic side. The second part is just payments, which is ultimately these data sets are most useful when you're gathering unique data. And so the thing that you want to be able to do is basically attract a global base of contributors. So you're not just working with like only Southeast Asia or only like parts of Africa. If you're trying to I'll give a simple example. If you're trying to train a robot that opens doors, you can sort of think about all the doors you've seen in your life across different countries, and they're pretty varied. Like Singapore loves the type where it's like that little push button on the side. You push it and then the door slides. But you might also have some that are like the push the airlock button to exit or a push bar or a door handle. And like if you actually want to train a robot, like a robot itself is not smart inherently. The way it gets smart is by seeing all of these different types of things and being able to actually see how people interact with them. So like in order for your data set to be useful, you need to have lots of representative examples, not just curated from one specific country, but like the diversity of the world. So like this is actually where crypto has an unfair advantage, where if you can sort of invert this operation, so it's not like me as a centralized company, I have to go to 200 different countries, collect data on all of these different things. If I can instead just bounty it out to the world and say, look, anyone who can submit data that meets X, Y, and Z requirement, you will get compensated. That sort of like changes the efficiency of like how quickly can you aggregate this data set and how quickly can you like make something useful. The other thing that crypto helps us with is sort of on attribution of like who did what work. This is more on the blockchain side of stuff, where it's like if I want to pay people for the work that they've done, this is literally being able to say, look, here is like the content hash, and this is where like my IPFS and Filecoin days come in. But it's like if I can say like this is the unique piece of data that Lambro submitted into this data set that ended up getting licensed to like an OpenAI, like how do you get your slice of the contribution that you made to the greater corpus? So those are kind of like the three ways that we see it all playing together.
Okay, so it sounds like the first one is more like capital formation, where people can bet on what sector or what subnet that matters, right? Let's say I'm pulling this randomly, so clear. So the first one is data formation. Let's say capital formation. Let's say I want to bet my money. Let's as an investor, I want to bet on like hand coordination data, and I can invest in that subnet, and I can get returns somehow. Stop me if I'm wrong, by the way. The second one is like because how easy and well spread of crypto is, you'd be able to get data from various cities better from a decentralized community than a centralized. Then the third one is tracking and distributing incentives to the right users using blockchain data. Is that correct?
Broadly, yes. I think in the first one, it's less about individually betting on a specific type of data, but more like people betting with the things that they create. So like, I don't think we're trying to like create like a prediction market in the like, I don't know, like you explicitly are like putting down like I'm betting on egocentric video, but like people might actually start like creating the egocentric data sets that then try to get licensed, and then they get compensated for that. So it's like based on like the market. In this case, the market is not just like the speculative market. It is literally like what are labs paying for so that there's like a revenue generation flywheel. So
it's like co-investing into that kind of thing. It's like co-investing into
but like, so, I mean, like practically we've had teams reach out being like, we're interested in trying to do sort of like the iPhone data collection version of this, where it's like iPhones, specific generations have like LiDAR on them. So like, could I incentivize people to download an iPhone app and go participate in this thing? Like that's a different approach to how other subnets are like trying to create egocentric video data. But you can have both of those like bets run in parallel, because like from the perspective of the AI lab, like they care most about like the time premium of how fast can you deliver me egocentric video that meets the requirements of my researchers. So like the cool thing about how BitRobot is structured is like you aren't siloed into saying like we're only going to bet on this one form of data collection. You can have many of these in parallel, and then it's still the same labs that are like interested in the buying, and so you can sort of like get the feedback from like what are they actually willing to purchase.
Okay. I realized I never asked you to do a quick intro about what BitRobot does, so maybe a lot of listeners are not fully understand. Do you mind doing a quick intro? What kind of like robotic crypto stuff you guys are doing right now?
Yeah, so BitRobot, I sort of alluded to this a little bit. So we're formed as a network of subnets. So for us, each subnet it can be structured as anything that's valuable for robotics. Right now, a lot of those are data markets. So these are really structured around curating different types of data sets. Inside of each subnet, you basically are structuring someone who's a subnet owner or a set of someone's. They're basically defining what is the type of work that, if it's done, like both, what is the type of work, how is that work rewarded, and then like who is doing the scoring of that work. But in practice, what this looks like is one of them may be like, if you wear a specific device and go collect a bunch of data, you'll be compensated if it meets X, Y, and Z criteria. Like no one else in this data set has submitted something that shows, I don't know, laundry folding in some country. So like you can basically add all of these specific requirements, or, I mean, this is another real one. Someone asked, one of like the AI labs was asking like, how quickly could you spin up data collection for a specific type of factory? And so like that literally could just turn into a bounty request of like, hey, if someone is like submits data that meets X, Y, and Z requirement, there's 2x the rewards. It's like a payout for submitting data that meets that criteria. So the subnet model is really just around like how do you structure the specific type of data collection inside of that market. But you can have many of these different subnets in parallel to each other. So some of these subnets will be focused on egocentric video, some of them focused on teleoperation, some of them focused on simulation, and down the line there could be even things outside of data collection. So we already have teams that are interested in like how do we get like evaluation as a service and other types of things that could be useful for robotics companies.
Okay, taking a step back, I understand the use case now, which is rare in crypto, but I don't understand how this is structured. Are you a chain? Are you like you mentioned subnet a few times, like in terms of like to a block, to a crypto bro, how does it work?
Yeah. So it's a series of smart contracts on Solana. So for us, like subnets are just a way of structuring work. And the way that we're using the blockchain, as I mentioned, is for attribution and for payments. So like the goal is to basically have a full audit trail of who did what work as like a contribution graph of literally just events that are being emitted on Solana. Anyone can walk that graph to see who did what work and how was that compensated against the different rules that are being enforced in the smart contract. So like we're ideally using the like smart contracts really just to structure the work. most of the work is like getting people to go create these different types of data assets, do their contributions, and then get retroactively compensated for the work that they've done.
So sounds like it's like a coordination layer. So let's say what kind of participant is there? So it sounds like there's you as a coordinate layer. There's non-crypto or just robotic people that want to find users' data somehow, and there's like people like me where I can be like, hey, I want to provide data. Is there anyone else? Like, what are the stakeholders in this whole game?
Yeah. I mean, so it can get very broad. The ones that I think are maybe simplest to reason about. So there's like, it could be like you as someone who's creating a data set. So for egocentric video, it literally could be that you are both the owner of a piece of hardware as well as the one who's creating the data for that hardware. For other types of subnets, that may be separate. So like for teleoperation, someone may have a bunch of humanoids and may make them available inside of the network, but someone else might be controlling the humanoids because teleoperation is the thing where it's like human controls robot. So like those are two different types. You can have subnet owners. They're the ones that are like structuring the different types of work. And then you may get more. So we've had people reach out about this because we are not live yet. This is like stuff that we think are interesting future works, but we have not done them ourselves. But like people who are interested in like, how can I provide capital as like a service? So like you could sort of think of this as the merge between like real world assets and like asset financing on chain with basically like helping create a fund for like hardware and things like that. So there's a lot of like future things that could be done. Right now, it's really focused on like who are different forms of contributors, whether that be like direct hardware resources that you're putting on the network, whether that be like you putting your labor on the network through like data collection or like teleoperation and so on, and then the people that are structuring the work.
Nice. So so what kind of like how sorry, I don't know what's the term, but how live are you guys right now? Like how many partners you guys working with? How many subnets are there? What kind of metrics we can use to define this? This is quite new to me, sorry.
Yeah. So we have not gotten to testnet yet, though that'll be happening later this year. So for us, I mean, also given the state of the crypto market, a lot of what we're focused on is just, look, let's get a lot of this stuff like bootstrapped through like centralized efforts. So Robotics as like the centralized lab co, they're doing a lot of the data collection for some of the early subnets. There are some that are open right now to the community. So TeleArms is one where basically you can help create. So yeah, TeleArms Playground is that one in the middle. So people can basically take control of simulation arms to like do specific tasks and get rewarded for it. We have others like Seesaw, which are egocentric video using iPhones. That's like another one that Virtuals helped launch. We have others like Axis Robotics. They also have a simulation platform that people can like teleoperate robots inside of. So there's more and more of these that are coming online. Fugi is another one. This is like an urban navigation data set where you can control a little robot and basically like navigate it around the world to get basically like little rewards on chain. And then RoboCap. RoboCap is probably one of the ones that like has the most demand behind it right now. This is something that we'll be sharing more details about, but this is like an egocentric video data collection device.
Sorry, I was muted. So as you can tell, I'm a crypto bro. I can sound a bit toxic right now. So let's say I find your concept cool. I like this. I want to long this, or I want to try to see is there an opportunity to make money or get a stake in this. Like, what can I do right now, or what should I look forward to?
Yeah, so I think the best thing to do is you should follow us on Twitter because we're going to have some more announcements coming up in the next month. So there will be more things to, directly get involved in. Right now, there are early subnets that are in their like beta. So TeleArms, as an example, people can sign up and take part in that. If you follow us on social media or in our Discord, we have early subnets that are looking for early contributors that people can get involved with. Fugi, you can take part in now. Seesaw as well. So there's many different opportunities to be a part of the network. There will be eventually more announcements that are coming. Give it maybe like 2 or 3 weeks. And so, if you follow us on Twitter, you'll see it all.
Sounds good. So like, do I just go into their site and then I just go there and kind of like test it and start using it or something? Like is there like a step? I guess every subnet is very different then.
Yeah, so every subnet's different. We will have an app that's launching that lets you basically see across subnets
your status basically is sort of like across the whole BitRobot ecosystem, how things look. So there will be like ways to do that, just so that you aren't like going crazy trying to keep track across like 15 different subnets how things are going. But yeah, each subnet itself, you can sort of think of it as its own standalone little market as it's doing its creation. They have a lot of flexibility in how they do that. Also, if you have any listeners that are interested in creating a subnet, we have a bunch of different ideas that people could go run after if they're very excited about robotics. So happy to share more with them if they DM me on Twitter.
Nice. So what's your next focus right now then?
Yeah, I mean, right now, a lot of this actually is commercialization. So there's a lot of demand from the AI labs for some of the data sets that are being produced in the ecosystem. I think, especially given the the revenue meta, aka having like real business models, I think a lot of the focus of the ecosystem is just how do we make that as smooth as possible. I think, yeah, I mean, we want to have the thing that I think DeepIn is really powerful for is like, once you have some baseline of like this thing is trucking, like how do you basically like massively accelerate the rate of delivery? So if we have lots of these contracts that are already in place and scaling, then the thing that DeepIn gives us is like massively pull forward how fast the delivery could happen and massively diversify like which countries are participating and what types of tasks are being sort of like rewarded. And so I think that's how we sort of see DeepIn actually like augmenting this.
Sounds good. So if I were to summarize the whole BitRobot thesis, is that right now you guys are a orchestration layer, like a connector between, like, let's say a robotic company that wants data, or and users that want to provide data, or even in the future capital allocators that want to support robotics features or invest in something technically. And then you guys are facilitating the whole thing and going to get a cut in between, basically. Would you say that's like a fair statement?
I think that's like a reasonable like 20-second pitch.
Nice. Okay, understood. So is there anything you want to share more on the BitRobot part? If not, I want to ask you a little bit more about like crypto robotic sector in general.
Sure, yeah. We can go into crypto robotics.
I mean, like most of them are schemes, bro. Like, do you want to share a little bit? Like, what are some real ones, or what kind of things are people tackling into that you think it's real or has more solid?
I mean, I think, like, honestly, and this is not me talking my own book, I do think there is like a real data challenge. Like, I don't think people fully appreciate this. So I guess maybe a good way of like contextualizing this for people. So we released a 500-hour data set for the humanoids in homes, and like that is probably at least 2 orders of magnitude larger than what is available, like, but aside from what we put out there. It's just like there is no open data, and it's very expensive for people to collect. And there is sort of like a flywheel question of how do you bootstrap the collection of these data assets, and how do you make it much more accessible for more folks? I think, like, especially as we think about what's happening in robotics, there will be an opportunity, like as AI models get more and more powerful, having bespoke and lowering the barrier of entry on a lot of this stuff is going to be important if you want many players to participate. I think the cool thing is I actually think the bar is much lower than people think, in order to like, how do you make it possible for a new robotics company to start from scratch? Like, as you have more of these foundational data assets that are available off the shelf, like you do not have to buy, how do I explain this in a way that's simple? It's like, if you're creating something from scratch, someone has to front the upfront cost from zero, which is very expensive, which means like you need a handful of companies that have very deep pockets to basically fund that work. Most of those companies would like to cost share with someone else. So like usually they are not saying like, we're going to buy this data. In a handful of cases, they're buying exclusively, but many of them are hoping that you will find other customers. But what that means is like the actual cost of that data gets driven down as more people are participating. So like for a net new startup to come and like want to buy, call it like 1 million hours of egocentric video, that will be much cheaper, or at least like that will be cheaper for them to like purchase in, call it like 2 or 3 years than it is today, because there will be data assets that are available that they can just buy off the shelf. And so I think like crypto helps solve this cold start problem of like, how do you just massively accelerate the creation of these things? Because it will like increase the number of people that are going to actually like purchase these things in the long term. I think given where robotics is going, it seems like the hardware side is actually advancing at a much faster rate than the software side. And so this is a unique moment where like the thing that is bottlenecking a lot of the robotics companies is just the data side. which crypto can uniquely help solve for.
Would that be something that gets commoditized in a bit? Like, surely if I buy some sort of data and then eventually in a year or so the data is not enough, or someone would buy the data off my data and train more, it's like distilling someone's other's AI model kind of thing, right? Does that happen, or is that something I'm just daydreaming?
No. I mean, I think this is a question of like scale. So like, I think in the next, call it 5 to 10 years, data is going to be a very strong business, just because, again, it's like, if you think of how much data has gone into the generative AI models, like we are so far behind them in terms of, I said 500 hours was a large data set just a second ago. That's like nothing for like generative AI. So like we're so far off that like we have several orders of magnitude to get through in order to make this like, okay, this is fully commoditized. I do think over time though, there's other data, like other business models that you want to be in outside of just pure data collection in order to like basically like, how do you do the jujitsu move of moving from like one massive business line into other things? I don't want to like fully explain like what is the full BitRobot roadmap just yet, but like I think our view is like data is an important, and at least for the next few years, like a very like profitable like business line to be in, and over time that's going to shift as there's other basically like bottlenecks in robotics.
Nice. All right. Yeah. Thank you very much for coming on board. Like, it's hard to find, like, I spoke to a few robotics team as well, but like most of them are quite schemes. But like, it's good that we got connected, and then like, thanks for sharing so much. I mean, like, so is there any I'm guessing the next closest thing for listeners to look forward to is the new app and the coordination thing, and then as more subnets come on live, we can start playing with it basically.
For sure, yeah. So there's definitely ways to get involved if you're like super enthusiastic after this. As we mentioned, if you follow us on Twitter / join our Discord, we're always posting like the early alpha for people of like, here are new things that you can try out and participate. We'll have more announcements in the next, call it like 2 to 3 weeks of like new things that are coming online that people can participate in, and yeah, rewards programs, things like that. So yeah, people should stay tuned.
Yeah, sounds good. I would love to like try to train some data and all that stuff. That would be fun. I realized I never asked you this question. How crypto native are you, or your involvement with crypto previously, or right now in general?
You know, so it's funny. I think I mentioned, so I used to work at Protocol Labs. So I joined them back in 2019. So this was now quite a while. So I've been in crypto for a long time. I'm like, as much as the market is quite sad, like I'm still like a believer that like we can do interesting things with blockchain outside of like pure speculation. I think the question is like, how do you take the speculative energy of like crypto and direct it into something productive? I do think this idea of like, here's a thing that you can just show up and get paid is a very powerful idea. And I think DeepIn itself is a very powerful idea of like, how do you basically use the economic forces of crypto to manifest like real world assets to do useful things? And so I think like BitRobot's a very interesting application of both of those, where it's like, hey, both at a time where Web 2 doesn't have an alternative. It's not like, oh, look, OpenAI could go buy 1 million hours of data from someone tomorrow. Like this data asset doesn't exist. So Web 3 actually has a unique opportunity to go manifest this thing before a Web 2 alternative actually does it themselves. So yeah, I think it's like the right moment at the right time for us to be working on this problem.
Sounds good. I agree. The reason why I asked you is because typically by the end of the stream, I ask people, most of them are this question: what do you think is required to make it in crypto?
To make it in crypto? I mean, look, I guess it depends on like who you're talking to and what making it means to them. I think in our case, it's like, it's not even like make it in crypto. It's like, what does it take to make it? Like in our case, I do think crypto is enabling a very specific outcome, which is like, how can you build the most scalable and best economics for these types of data collection businesses? I actually think crypto is the best answer to that question. I think there's challenges you have to solve to make that statement true, but I think those are not insurmountable challenges. And I think that's why we're making the big bet on like why this is the right way to go after this problem. And yeah, I mean, I think if that's true, then I don't think it's like a crypto specific, like what does it take to make it? I think you will build the best business that's out there.
Great. Thank you very much. Is there anything you want to say or ask me before we finish off?
No, actually, this is maybe a very niche question. I don't know if you will know. Have you heard of this company, 1X?
No.
So 1X is a humanoid company. They were doing a pre-sale earlier. I was going to ask, when do you think, what is your internal heuristic of when you would buy a humanoid to sit in your house and do chores for you?
Oh yeah. I've seen one X around. Like I've just Google searched it and looked at the face. And yeah, I would actually buy it ASAP. Like to be very honest with you, there's the type of stuff that I would just buy and test things out for fun as long as it's not too expensive. Or if you say you launch a one X and I might get potential like some sort of returns in the future, I would just buy it with no like why not, right? Like bro, I have like 10 Solana phones. So like bro, it's like using something that might be useful for me while potential return. Like that's why I'm saying crypto is amazing for DePIN of some sort. It's just that so far we haven't seen like very successful cases. But yeah.
But like, okay, you're joking about it, but like, okay, I point at Tesla quite often because I feel like Tesla and self-driving is such an interesting story where it's like a Tesla self-driving car did not drive itself to start. Tesla sold cars to people. People would drive the cars would collect all the data to learn how to drive the policies, and then eventually you have a self-driving fleet and so on. What's interesting about that is like cars are super expensive, but like a human driving a car is still useful to the human. The same thing is not true for robotics. And so like I actually think this is another area that crypto has a unique superpower where it's like if you were just trying to sell a humanoid today while it can't do the chores itself, like you're making a bunch of trade-offs and it's a very expensive product that makes a bunch of trade-offs that makes it a hard sell. But like the thing that you actually need is a lot of people to do what you're saying. Kind of like you bought 10 Solana phones. Like you need a lot of people who are willing to buy 10 useless humanoids to put them in their homes and do a bunch of stuff to collect the data that makes the robot useful. And I think crypto is an answer to like, how do you close that cold start problem? I think is actually pretty interesting.
100%. Like I feel like so from my point of view, right? Basically, this X1 robot became like a, let's say, the tech guy, expensive rich tech guy thing to buy in the house as a display, like just like Tesla as a car at the start, right? It needs to be something as some sort of flex or an external reason why people will use it. I don't train it for the greater good, bro. I don't care if robotic comes a year earlier because I start using Tesla, right? Like, but the thing is, like, if it gives me other value, right? It will either it can be money, it can be flexing, it can be status. Then I wouldn't mind going for it, right? Like it's expensive, but it's not that expensive kind of thing, right? Like, and also I live in Hong Kong. I have a helper that comes cleans and cooks and stuff. Like if I get an X1 robot, even if it's not that good, but I can get my helper to do it for me while I can turn out, oh yeah. Aren't you into robotics yet? Like I bought this thing that start moving for me. I mean, it's not the best. Like my helpers still have to control it around, but like I would get it for fun. You know what I mean? Like, but yeah, definitely get why crypto or crypto enable alternative value routing into things a lot easier. Like I think Tesla is a very special case because they have Elon Musk and all that stuff, and obviously the car performance and etc. But like crypto obviously lowers the bar to route, let's say, either money or speculative value, or as well as like people in crypto are the people willing to test things the most as well. So I think I definitely agree with you basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, cool. Very good to have you today. I'll be looking forward to like ping me when you have new subnet and everything comes live. I would love to play around with it and come to get you on board again to see what's up.
Hell yeah, we'll do.
All right, take care, man.
Cool. Thanks for having me.